Hey everyone, it's Andrew Schiffman.
Harry Turcott here. We both worked at MTV in the music and talent department in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was a time where music videos, TRL, The Jersey Shore, and the Osbournes ruled the airwaves.
Yes, Andrew, those are some great years. So tune in every week as we catch up with old MTV coworkers, record label execs, VJs, and artists.
I can't wait, Perry. We'll give you insights into meeting superstars before they were superstars and some juicy secrets from that golden age of MTV.
So grab your headphones and get ready to relive the era of music television and the people who shaped a generation.
Welcome to the Music Lounge. I love this day. It's a rainy, Rainy Friday. But we have a great guest today that we are lucky to have on the show. Right, Perry?
We have an amazing guest today, somebody that we have been going after for months and months and months, and just so jam-packed schedule that we haven't been able to get him, but he is here today.
He's here.
Very, very excited. So welcome to the Music Lounge, Tom Calderone.
Thanks, guys. And I am busy. I have to go, but thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate thank you for your patience. It was around the holidays and stuff. I want to say a couple things about this show. So I learned about it through our dear friend, Susan Natoli, who I have to apologize to in a second. But when I saw the concept of this, it just warmed my heart because the whether it's Diane Mayer, all these people talking, you had Robin on, right?
Oh yes.
It made me smile because that was lightning in a bottle. You can't replicate, right? And it was crazy and nuts, but also socially, we were probably the most boring people in show business. But it just was such a great thing. So congratulations on this. And what'd you say before we turned on? How many shows so far? 30 in a row?
I think 30 weeks. Wow. Yeah, we actually launched on MTV's birthday last year. So we're excited. And when we intro our guests, we normally follow with a title.
Yes.
I think you don't need one. It's just Tom Calderone.
I will give the title for anybody who is not familiar with Tom. Former EVP of music and talent at MTV and MTV2, former president of VH1, former global head of Spotify Studios, and currently the CEO and president of PBS and NPR for the Buffalo, Toronto area. Is that correct, Tom?
That is correct.
What a title.
Yeah.
And I would also say you put the T in MTV.
Thank you. No,
which I'm sure you've heard.
That's very kind of you. Like all of you, I think we all, when we got the job, walked in going, I don't know what this is going to be. And I will tell you, anytime I have a moment of a flashback to that time, it's always smiles. As tough as it was, how hard it was, and not only pushing yourself to evolve and reinvent and all that, we were all doing it all at the same time, and it was great.
I think the two things that we say pretty much to every guest that we have on is, one, what you just said, it was lightning in a bottle. It was a staff of people that you could never put together again, and a time in music that you could never get back to, number one.
True.
And number two, that you were so busy and the churn of it was so great that you never really had a chance to step back and appreciate how amazing it was to have, a day where you've got Madonna and Jay-Z and Bono come in the office and you're like, wait, this is everyday life here. I mean, it just
another day in the office
doesn't exist.
No, and Perry, you're absolutely right. I think if any regrets or in Arrested Development regrets that you would say is that there were no those times to kind of sit back and go, oh, that was cool. Yeah, the Christmas party, or maybe, Robin would bring her margaritas in and stuff. But we didn't really celebrate the wins. We did not as much as we should have. Yeah.
But again, I feel so fortunate to have been part of it. I know Andrew feels the same way, and every person we've talked to, whether they were working in the building or working outside of the building and working with us also have that same response too. It's like, we knew that MTV was going to step up and do something great with our artists, whether it's a developing artist or whether it's a superstar.
Yeah.
It would always be something really amazing and cool and fun. So
It's so on point, Perry. So on point.
I will actually ask you a question now.
Sure.
So Andrew and I obviously know you from MTV and MTV2, but you began your career in radio.
Yeah.
How did you start? Where did you start? And how did you make the move to MTV?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So went to school at Buffalo State College with the SUNY system, one of the few SUNY systems that had not only a great broadcasting program at that time, but also allowed you as a freshman to go on the air. So it was between Buffalo and Syracuse were kind of my two things. The problem with Syracuse was at the time you had to be a junior to get on air. And I'm like, well, that's a waste of 2 years, right? So did the same sacrifices we all did, get the internships and everything else. And then I got a job at a station in Buffalo, an AM station of all things, that was like a full service news and music station. So it was these big personalities and stuff. And I would run the board and I would run the God Squad tapes, the religious programming. And it was downtown. So like the window would be open and, I would see all my friends go to the punk rock club on a Friday night. And there was running reel to reels of the Wolfman Jack show. But I was like, okay, this will pay off. This is going to pay off. And then a couple of stints, went to Long Island, went to Washington, D.C. Then I worked for Jacobs Media, a consulting firm, a national consulting firm. Very randomly, one day, I was in Indianapolis doing research for our station there. And again, no cell phones. There were car phones, but no cell phones. So the thing, you go back to your hotel after a day of meetings and you check your voicemail. And there's a voicemail from Judy McGrath. Never met her before, never, I knew her, of course, And she goes, hey, I heard good things about you. We're making some changes. We'd love to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, the first thing I'm thinking, okay, this is not Judy McGrath. Someone's playing with me. So, of course, I call my friends, the pranking friends. I'm like, did you guys do this? Or did you have your wives do this? So it was her. So after a bunch of fits and starts, we finally had a bunch of meetings. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out on that round. They went with somebody else. But I was like, okay, cool. But in typical MTV fashion, when you do a meeting or an interview with them, there'd be like 30 people in the room. No introductions, had no idea who these people were, including...
What did she want you to do? Was it the role that you were eventually hired for?
Well, the problem...
The timing wasn't there?
That was the thing. I don't think they knew what the role was.
Gotcha.
I think they were trying to figure out what would best serve MTV and MTV2. So in a way, I'm kind of glad it didn't work out the first time. And then Judy, and I kept in touch. I think I saw her at a couple of concerts and it was a great experience. It really was crazy, but a great experience. And then about 9 months later, they said, I think we're going to make another change. But here's the deal. We're going to offer you the job. Please, you have to let us know in a day. So I sat with Van Toffler in his office, one of my favorite people in the world. And
Absolutely.
Oh my God. I miss him a lot. And he's still with us. Don't get me wrong, but I just miss interacting with him, He and Judy, So sat in his office, went through it. I'm like, okay, what's a typical day like? There's no typical day, blah, blah, blah. And then that was it. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's do this for 2 years. They're going to fire me anyway. So let's do it for 2 years, see what happens. 17 years later, it was a great run in that building. So, but that's how it happened. It was not one of those things where I was like, oh, I want to work at MTV someday. It was more like it just kind of happenstance and through reputation and connections and everything. But Judy was the first call, and I was incredibly humbled by a call like that. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
You definitely rose to be a powerhouse leader, but you have this personality and trust in your team that it was almost like you're working with a very close group of friends.
Yeah.
You just really brought the best out of everyone that you hired. And I think whether you were involved in the hiring of the people under you, it was just the most perfect match.
Thank you for that. I've always, even where I am now, I am always of the mindset that there are leaders that will come in and bring in all their friends. and populate a table with people that look like them, sound like them, yes them to death. I like being challenged. I want someone
Yeah.
coming to my office and fighting for something. And I think it's such a fragile ecosystem to find the right players. And sometimes things don't fit. But I say our batting average was pretty good in that music group for sure. We had all these like wacky people, that would flow in at 11 o'clock in the morning and stay there till 4 a.m. Like, it was a wild time.
The amount of differing voices that there were there was, getting back to it, you could never put a group of people like that together again,
Right.
because everybody had their own likes and dislikes, but everybody gelled too and
Mhm.
worked together really well, and you respected the people that you were working with also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was also when I first got there, there was a little tension with that department and with other departments. I'm like, look, guys, the only way you're going to get things done is fortifying your relationships with MTV News, marketing, press, like digital, like, well, whatever digital was back then, right? But,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm probably projecting because there was really no digital, right? At that moment, I think we did like TRL contests when people still had dial up, but it was also fortifying those relationships within the building because that's how you got stuff done. So I think breaking down those walls a little bit also helped. I think because sometimes people were a little intimidated by coming to our area on 25. It's like, well, these are the cool kids or whatever, right? Uh,
Yes.
but breaking down that wall and adding some humanity as partnership and also some empathy to what you guys had to go through every day. You had your own, situations you had to deal with. So I think that also added an element of respect on both sides.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know if you remember, I started off in corporate
That's
communications
right.
in the LA office, and I shot you an email after reading an article, and I was like saying to myself, this is the guy I want to work for. This is the area I have to be in. And, after talking to Gina, moving to New York, working for Paul D,
Oh,
the opening was there in the music team, like in 2005, and I jumped and, was there for a while. So,
yeah, and that's the one thing about MTV was that Andrew, it was that organic way of getting into the building. It's almost like if you did a campaign to get in, people are a little more suspect of it. But I think it's just being authentic in that email back to me. And I'm like, wait, dude, what is, and then I talked to Gina. She's like, oh, the best guy ever. Then you trust Gina in our LA
yeah,
office, her and Sky.
that was
I
cool.
wish I kept in touch with people more. It's all on me. But I generally, as you're saying these names, I'm like, oh God, Joanna Bomberg, like all these people.
My way into the office was similar, kind of. I actually started, well, I was at VH1 for 4 years.
Right.
I left, took a 3-month fill-in position with MTV Online at the time,
Right.
working for Michael Alex and with Brandon Schmidt.
Yes.
And the woman who I was filling in for decided not to come back from maternity leave, and I ended up staying for 10 years.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Perry, to give you credit on that, you were definitely in the wild, wild west of what is this, right? And because the traditional television model was going to be disrupted, we didn't know it yet, but it
Right.
was going to be disrupted. And the fact that Tom Preston and Judy and Van had this vision to figure out the fact that they put you downtown in Soho at a separate offices, right? MTVI, I think it was called,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The fact that they
hmm
got you out of the building, I thought was such a inspired idea because it was like, I don't want people in the vortex of 1515 Broadway. I want them to feel free. And I thought that was
Yeah.
a great vision.
Yeah. It
Like
was, and the space we had there was incredible, and
Yeah.
it was completely different than what the MTV space was. So when artists came in, they felt that this was MTV being forward looking as far as opportunities for what we could do with talent.
I think I went down to meet with you on that point just to kind of check the place out. And I went back to our offices. I'm like, damn, we're so corporate here. Like even though the walls had, I don't know what was on those walls, it just felt like, oh man, that's where we should be, but that was the vision of Tom, Judy, and Van, and it not only worked, but it just propelled things.
Yeah. The only thing we didn't have there was a music lounge.
Mm.
So
remember that, right? There was like right. Well, yeah, and that's why I want to apologize to Susan Natoli, your partner in crime on this series. Poor Susan, no, Andrew, you as well, sat kind of behind, or actually, so the speakers are here. There's a wall, and then there's Susan and
And our
Andrew.
pit was
right.
So sadly, they were the recipient of lots of loudness throughout the day. So I officially
Hey, I
apologize.
ended up being in those meetings, so it was all good.
Yeah, but poor Susan, yeah, she's trying to like do grown up stuff, and we're listening to
Yeah.
music, you know.
At MTV, you were overseeing a lot of different departments within the music team, right?
Yeah.
There was music programming and talent relations and partnerships and bookings.
Yep.
I guess without looking at 17 years of accomplishments, what do you think were your top achievements leaving MTV?
A bunch of things. One is leaving MTV in a good place, that the people there were going to be okay, and that they were just going to take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But the micro part of it was ideas can come from any part of our department. And then Brian Graydon, who was in charge of programming and development and stuff, gave us the keys to, frankly, create television programming. So whether it was Snoop Television, whether it was You Idiot with Blink 182, MTV Icon, Wonder Chosen, which of course, Wonder Chosen is probably my, which is not a music show. I'll always be proud of that. Because I think we just pushed so many buttons and all that. That show could never exist now, for sure. But the fact that we got the keys to create weekend stunts like What a Girl Wants with Christina Aguilera, and also I was able to infuse a little bit of my sense of humor. Dave Sarelnik, another great partner in the building, had this series called 25 Large, and there would be people sitting around a table talking about how important music is and culture. And I'm like, we should do a show called 25 Lame, and let's pick the 25 worst music videos of all time. So we had Jon Stewart, Janine Garofalo, Colin Quinn, I think. And we basically said, we're going to pick these 25. You'll never see them again. And that was a fun show. And then the millionth video that we did, the live stunt on a Saturday we did. So the fact that we were given permission to create some things, because look, we had hits with Osbournes and Newlyweds and Jackass and all this stuff. I like the fact that we had a little bit of, I guess, that heart and soul of MTV in a storytelling way. And that was the key to that.
What would you say was the worst video of all time?
What was that? Oh, that Journey one where they're leaning against some, like, what the heck was the name of that song? Oh,
they were
brutal.
pretty bad in the 80s.
Oh my God, just absolutely brutal. That was a bad
Even if
one.
the song was good, they made some lame videos.
Oh my God, it was foot's against the wall, and he's like singing about something that he lost, and he deserved to have lost it. And that was one of the lame ones for sure. But the funny thing is,
there was 25 of them.
Yeah, we had 25 of them. I'm sure that the list is somewhere, and they're all worthy of being on that list for sure.
It's amazing what you can find on the web these days.
Oh my God,
I mean, everything is archived somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was looking for something around one of the countdown shows we did at VH1, I think it was, and there it was. I got the whole list of I think it was best hip hop videos of all time. I think it was. Yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what people remember and or saved somehow, probably on a VHS tape somewhere, and created a web page out of it. Yeah. It's incredible. So obviously the TV programming and the programming of videos and creating shows was a big part of your job, but also award shows were a big part of your job too. Making a show that was going to be entertaining, that was going to be surprising, that might even be a little bit shocking. I wasn't in the meetings for the development of award shows, so take us through that process a little bit. And how did you decide that something was just on the edge of being outrageous without going too far?
It's a great question. So again, we also have to set the table. There was no social media at that time, or at least when I was doing the VMAs, Movie Awards, and MTV Icon. So our buzz would have been the cover of the New York Post the next day, or Entertainment Tonight and stuff. So it was a little more traditional in the reach on it. The problem with that show was you always had to outdo yourself every year. but to your point, Perry, but also not be like stupid about it, right? So whether it's a small thing like a pairing at a podium, to pushing the envelope as far as my friend Triumph the dog, we always challenged ourselves. And I think again, now that group was a little larger. So it was our team, Dave Sorelnik, Alex Coletti, like there was a bunch of other people around that table because we'd have an idea. It's like, well, what's the production look like? So we needed those, everyone needed to be in there. Or, hey, we're thinking of Jay-Z, jumping from a helicopter into Radio City. He's not doing that, like that kind of stuff. But the idea really was around, okay, let's first take the tenets of what the year looked like, pop culture wise, music wise, sports wise, all of that. And let's first think of a host. So the problem, as the years had gone on, the hosting thing became more problematic for us because there was no win for some of these people to host things because we were live. If it was a disaster, I think David Letterman sadly was the recipient of that with the Oscars. But so you had to convince people. So it was usually Chris Rock, Jimmy Fallon, hosting. But then it was like, okay, what are we putting around that? What's the theme of it? And sometimes it was the venue, i.e. the Met, 9/9/99, September 9th, 1999. So we did the Met. So we did the marketing campaign was around famous opera stars or opera settings with our stars, Madonna, Ozzy Osbourne, etc. So we kind of started there with the template, and then it was more like we were then getting pitches. What about this? We always look for a really good collaboration, but also what was that special moment? There was also a little music tension too in those early days because pop was becoming a thing. And how do you get Nine Inch Nails and Backstreet Boys on the same stage in the same show? And that was a challenge. But they're both very important, right?
Did some artists ever push back because they didn't like somebody else that was also performing in a show? You don't have to say any names. I'm just curious if that ever happened.
No, I'll tell you one of the examples, and I actually agreed with the artist. We were going to do, as a Radio City, we were thinking of doing like the Vines, the Strokes, and the White Stripes. And Jack White's like, I just don't feel that. And we respected that. Like, that was like, yeah, no, we get it. Like, and in hindsight now, looking back, they just deserve the full slot for sure.
Right.
But you're also trying to create great television at the same time because, as we know, watching people just strum a guitars is not going to work. Again, something we probably could not do now, but Blink 182 with all the small things with people at a certain stature jumping on trampolines and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Whose idea was Fart Man?
I wasn't there for that. That was, I think that was his. I think that was Howard's. Yeah, I think that was Howard's, but I wasn't there. My first VMA was, I joined in 98. So my first VMA was the 99 one. I joined in November of 98. So my first one was that. So that was the Kid Rock, right? Kid Rock, Run DMC, Aerosmith, big opening at the Met with Chris Rock. That was my first one. And we had Prince come on to do TLC and stuff. Yeah, that was a really big year.
Amazing.
And then
and that was that was Little Kim and the Pasty, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. At the Met.
At the Met.
With all the unions and everything else that we had to adhere to. But then the other part of it too was, okay, what else can we add to it to create moments that isn't necessarily on stage? And I really consider him a dear friend, even though we don't communicate as much as we used to. But one of my dear friends was Robert Smigel. And I remember somebody came to me and said, do you think he'd bring, Triumph? I'm like, yeah, let's ask. So he wrote a bunch of lines in the audience. That was the J-Lo thing at that moment. J-Lo had a great sense of humor. Everyone had a great sense of humor except for one person. A guy that took down everybody, but he was afraid of a piece of felt.
Exactly.
And the fact that Eminem could not handle a sense of humor for someone that took everybody down. It's like being at a roast and having a frown the entire time. It's like, dude. So I remember that music lounge when he came to find out how that all happened. And of course, he's like, I'm pointing at you because you're the friends with the dog. I'm like, I can't control what the dog says.
Amazing. We had Frank Polonia on a few weeks ago from Standards, and he took us through having his finger on the beep button live at the show. He would have who is it? Janet.
Janet Borelli.
Janet Borelli.
Yeah.
On the phone to a second person in case they missed it. because you had about 6 seconds of prep time. So if they missed it, someone else could catch it. So
Yeah,
that was
oh my God,
interesting.
poor Frank. Yeah, that was a lonely existence in that truck for sure. And the problem was if someone kept going off every time you hit the delay button, it would slow things down, so it would never have sound good. I don't think we had to use it too many times, but
No.
yeah, the Triumph thing was absolutely genius. We learned that some people can give it but not take it. So.
Yeah.
So in this part of our podcast, we take a break and I throw you some quick fires.
Okay.
What year did Britney kiss Madonna at the VMAs?
That had to be, let's see, that was at Radio City. It wasn't the 9/11 year. Was it 2002, 2003?
2003.
Okay,
correct.
got it. Okay. Yeah,
Bonus
sadly,
question was the
it's
venue,
gonna have that
which
9/11 thing. Yeah,
you already answered. Bonus question: who was the host of that year?
that was Fallon, right?
Chris Rock.
Oh, it was Chris Rock. Okay. Oh, I got to tell you the Fallon story with Michael Jackson. But go ahead.
Talking about Britney, in 2001, Britney performed what single holding that
Snake.
famous heavy python?
I don't remember. I'm going to be honest with you.
I Am a Slave for You.
That was it. By the way, that snake was in a cooler by our table, by the music and talent table, and I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, that must be water. I lifted it up. I'm like, oh, geez.
No.
Yeah.
No way.
I swear to God, it was in a cooler.
Really?
Yeah.
There wasn't someone there, like,
No.
in case it got out?
No.
Okay.
Nah.
Wow.
What was the first album that you bought?
First album I bought was either REM or Squeeze, because that was like the first concert I went to. So I think it was
vinyl.
Yeah, on vinyl for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. One of the shows you were involved in, MTV Icon, a great MTV event series celebrating music's most iconic artists.
Yeah.
There wasn't too many episodes with artists featured. Can you name the 4 that were booked?
Yeah, we did Metallica. We did obviously Janet. We who am I missing?
Aerosmith in
right?
2002.
You know what? I
and
blocked
the
them
Cure
out all the time of any
in
of my
04.
happiness. What?
The Cure was the last one.
Yes.
Which may have been a
That was MTV UK.
international MTV UK
Correct.
collab because
Yep.
it was filmed over there.
Yeah, we helped them book it. We helped them, put it together. By
Gotcha.
the way, the MTV UK people were so great. They were so much fun to work with. They really were. I love the fact they had
Nice.
summers off too. I was always jealous of that.
Really?
Don't you remember that?
That's
Like,
because
Perry, don't you remember in May, it'd be like, okay, we'll see you guys in September. I'm like, oh, okay, have fun.
that's because their award show wasn't until like the fall or winter.
Correct. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
November, I think. Yeah.
This may have been, well, this was before your time, but do you know the first video that was to air on M2?
It was Sonic Youth, Diamond C.
I have Beck where it's at.
That could be, yeah, that might be it. Yeah.
August 1st, 1996.
Okay, you know what? Here's why I picked that one, but it was Beck. Because Tina Exaros, who ran marketing, wanted Sonic Youth, and she always told me that. I'm like, oh, that was such a great song. We
We
had
got to
an
go
affinity
back.
to
It's a
Sonic
bigger
Youth,
song at
which,
the
by the
time.
way, is right. I don't know if I'm pointing right. Is like a poster of my
Oh.
living room.
Oh yeah.
What was your first concert?
First concert was REM, English Beat, and Squeeze.
And
Wow.
where was that?
The Long Island Nassau Coliseum.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and then at Buffalo State, where I went to school, they brought that tour to there at that time. Yeah,
Very cool.
What year was that tour?
I'm gonna say it was like 80,
88,
81.
89? Oh,
No,
81.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
early.
This is
Okay.
REM. This is Radio Free Europe REM. So this is that EP they had out.
Mhm.
And English Beat. So I think it was REM, English Beat, then Squeeze. And Squeeze was this was their quote unquote farewell tour. And REM only did a short set because they didn't have a lot of music at that time. But it was so great.
Right.
Well, you passed that, so congrats.
Wait, we talked about Jim. Can I tell about the Jimmy Fallon thing and Michael Jackson?
Please
Okay.
do.
Please,
Please do.
This is such a great story. So it was the Video Vanguard, that we were given to Michael Jackson. And which, by the way, in totality of that work at that time, probably deserved. So Jimmy Fallon, of course, we always gave the host kind of free reign. So Jimmy Fallon had the prop department make like a fake a Vanguard award to kind of say like, oh, they're giving it to everybody. I got one or whatever. And Michael Jackson's manager happened to stumble into the room where they were building all these things live as the show happened. And Brittany, I believe, was the one that gave him the award.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she came up to me. She goes, "Will you tell the comedian not to do that because it's going to upset Michael?" I go, "I comedians, you can't tell him anything." Da, 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 da. It was one of the funniest things, but he was threatening not to come on, and I'm like, "Okay, we just move on." I trust me, we got plenty of stuff to do. It's okay. And he ended up, accepting the award. And Jimmy Fallon had a great joke right after, but he can't cut the comedy. Can't cut the comedy.
Did he think it was a different award though, too, at some point?
I think Perry, you're right.
Performer of the Century or something. I can't remember.
Yeah. Wow, Perry.
Perry, you're absolutely right. It was. Oh, this is such a great show. It was. He didn't want just the Vanguard, but he wanted to be the Artist of the Century. That's what.
Artist of the Century. Yes. Yeah.
What does that even mean? So what?
The Best Artist of All Time award.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure there'll be other people behind him from years where there's no video at all that could actually make that argument too. So,
Exactly.
But yeah, sometimes managers can ruin experience.
Back on track.
Yeah,
technology plays a very crucial role in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you stayed ahead of the curve in your roles? What are your thoughts on the evolution of music consumption, and especially in your time, radio, television, streaming at Spotify, and then now back to radio? So
yeah, it's funny. It's I have always found it to be, and this is the learnings from MTV, frankly, is that, and this is what we tried to push at Spotify, was that you need to have a storytelling element to the music that you're playing. Because in my opinion, maybe wasn't shared at Spotify, was that why are people hearing a song then going to YouTube to hear that story? Let's keep them in our ecosystem. So we did a lot of short form documentaries, Green Day, Katy Perry, such. We also started adding video to Mabasa, former MTV person who worked for us at Spotify, who did the hip hop Rap Caviar channel playlist, started adding video to it and stuff. You want to keep people in that ecosystem. So a lot of times, NPR's done a good job of this with like tiny desks and things like that, is not just having the...
That is such a great show. Yeah.
We're so happy to be part of that. And we do our own version called Tiny Stages. We just had Spoon on a couple of months ago. But on the TV side here, with the PBS side, it is really about just don't play Austin City Limits. What are those other stories that you're going to tell about these artists? On the technology side, Andrew, frankly, you still have to be a student of the media. So it isn't just like, oh, I'm going to download TikTok and check it out. Like, you have to kind of create habits so you learn about it. And there are just so many, ways of getting music. It's also, we do here at Buffalo Toronto Public Media, tons of research. Where are people getting their news? Where are they getting their music? Where are they getting their masterpiece theater? Where are they getting their local content? So learning about some of these platforms that are still kind of new is also important. But I'm not sure if another music streaming service could ever come into the marketplace. I think people are kind of happy with where they are. I'm an Amazon Prime music consumer. And just because what I like about it is if I hear a new artist, I can scroll down and go, oh, I'm going to buy that vinyl, or I'm going to buy the book they just wrote,
Right.
So I like that. I like the connectivity to that, or even concert tickets that you get on Amazon. So it's a very, it's a complicated world, but I think you have to still be a student of the industry. Watch everything.
Yeah. In my roles during startups, I'm trying to, convince artists why they should create an album using an NFT. And then how are you going to promote that? A lot of pushback was, well, now I have to create something and drive viewership and commerce to a a different platform that they now have to download a new app, and maybe this app only takes cryptocurrency, so they have to go through that.
Right.
So I've always said, using these new tools and tech features, you got to think about the same rules but different tools, and go where your fans are.
Correct.
And if they're on Instagram, that's where you have to promote and spend a lot of the marketing and social time. So very, very challenging.
And all of the discovery of music is so fragmented and fractured today too. Going back to MTV, it was literally like you had radio or you had MTV at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, and TRL was this microcosm of it, because you talked about it earlier. You could have Britney on an episode, and you could have Korn on an episode, and then you could have Ja Rule on an episode, and it was just all over the place. And it was amazing that it all worked and the audience consumed all of it.
Yeah, we had a great research department at MTV, and they did this ethno study where they'd actually go into our audience's bedrooms and look at their CD collection. And the great thing about it was, you would see in a CD collection, without it being staged, Jay-Z, Linkin Park, Britney Spears, blah, blah, blah. Like, that was the consumption level, was like, well, if it's a good song, I love it. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, and you still had your cool kids that were like, oh, it's only about Korn or Rage or whatever. But some of the pop stuff, particularly the pop punk stuff, like Blink-182, like Good Charlotte, was infiltrating a lot of those at the time CD libraries. And I thought that was a very healthy time for music, that you could. It was almost like the old days of top 40 radio, probably back in the 70s, when they were playing, Sly and the Family Stone and the Beatles all on one station.
Yeah. And the other part of that was M2 and MTV2 was also giving you a sort of a music education for newer artists too, because that was a great platform to introduce bands or artists to the audience that they weren't quite yet familiar with.
And Perry, you probably heard me say this before. The great thing about MTV2 and Holly Shulman and all the people that kind of drove that ship, that I always felt was the palate cleanser. Because when you'd sit there at a music meeting in the music lounge, and you'd watch Britney and the usual suspects, you're like, Holly, what else we got? Oh, the new Radiohead or the new Air or whatever. So that was a good palate cleanser for sure. But again, with MTV2, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, so music video, great, but okay, where's that storyline to it? Is there a version of Fanatic that you are doing with maybe some of these bands, or are you stunting with some of this music and stuff? So that was.
I think a lot of the things that we created, making the video, a lot of behind the scenes, labels are now thinking of new concepts that go back to what we were doing 15 years ago, 20 years ago, where, we're like, that's not new. Like, so.
Yeah. But you know what's funny about that too, Andrew, is it was also a time, Diary was probably the best example of that Jesse and our team did. At that time, labels were still a little skittish about putting their artists in those shows, not for like anything to do with controversy. It was more like, oh man, we're starting to rub off the mystique. So we're all kind of learning together, because there was always that mystique, right? But now you realize there's only few people in this world that could put an album out every 5 years and people still care. Or in the case of Larry David, could do Curb Your Enthusiasm and wait 3 years for the next season. There's very few people that can get away with that for the right reasons. But that mystique thing kind of went away in favor of, you got to keep top of mind with your audiences or your soon-to-be audiences, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's what builds the connection. And as you said, you're continuing to tell that story without someone streaming their music.
Right.
There's so much, that you can now relate to, which increases the opportunity for you now to go buy a concert ticket because you saw this heartfelt video that they were talking about how much they love their mom or whatever it is, right? or their dogs. But
exactly.
I mean, it's fans need to be let in, and artists that do it, I think, are the ones that are succeeding.
Yep.
And talking about streaming, we were really the first place to do streaming with The Leak.
Yes.
Where we were letting people hear an album in its entirety a week before street date. You couldn't download it. It wasn't portable. You couldn't do anything with it,
Right.
but you could listen to it as many times as you wanted to. I remember we did an Eminem one, and we had over 2 million streams of the tracks from that in a week. And that was unbelievable numbers at that time.
But Perry, the thing was that it goes back to the environment you guys created downtown in Soho, an element and a vibe of trust. Look, guys, I know this is weird. I know this is counterintuitive to how you want to launch something, but I'm telling you, you're going to get the buzz off this. And it worked.
The first artist we did it with was Madonna, because Guy knew that this was something new
Right.
that no one had done before. He was a visionary, I think, on a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
She wanted to be the first doing something that was going to be cool or new, or that was going to be a breakthrough or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, going back to one thing you mentioned, like not regrets as much as to say, like, I'll tell you the one that I have, and you touched on something with Guy Oseary. We did Linkin Park and Jay-Z's mashup, and we won a Grammy for it. And I remember all Jay-Z said to me was, I just need a plane. Just get me a plane there and I will do this. And I'm bummed that we couldn't get across the finish line to do another one. Now, again, hitting in a bottle, but we were going to do Ludacris and Green Day at one point, and it was the hardest thing to book. But man, that was such a great, I still get chills thinking about that. So I'm sorry. So when you went back to the visionary, like, because Jay-Z's like, as long as I'm first, I'll do the series.
Right.
Like Madonna did for the leak for you guys.
Where is your Grammy?
Warner Brothers has it. Yeah, they're pretty cheap.
Come on, man.
Way, it was funny. We were doing a viewing party in LA, and we had no idea. Like, oh my God! And we're all looking at each other like, what? So we had, no idea. No idea.
That's
but yeah,
funny.
Warner Brothers. Yeah, I know. That's hard.
So this will air after the Grammys, but they're taping, or they're airing this coming weekend.
Yeah.
Do you miss going to the show? And is there anybody that you're excited to see perform?
You know, here's my thing with all of this. Working on the VMAs, the movie awards, and then going to VH1 and doing Divas and Hip Hop Honors and all the other stuff. I have, and I don't want to use this phrase because it's disrespectful to people who actually deal with it, but I definitely have a, I don't know how else to describe it, but I can't watch award shows because I'm too triggered to watch it because I feel the stress.
You know what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know what they're going through. So I cannot watch award shows. I can't. And I hadn't since I left the building, because I did watch the Fire Aid one a couple of weeks ago. But that's not an award show as much as a benefit, but I can watch award shows, Perry. It's really hard to,
I
get a little stressed.
Well, I will share one quick award show story that involves you. We were in Miami. I was a talent escort for P.D. Pablo. Suge Knight came backstage to see him. At the end of the show, I was walking P.D. Pablo to his car. Suge Knight was walking with us. You and Michelle said, get over here, get over here. And I was like, what? I don't understand what's going on. And they're like, get away from him, get away from him, get away from him. Because we're right out in the open. So thank you. You may have saved my life, Tom.
You're welcome, because there was definitely a list of people that were not invited. And somehow some people sometimes sneak in to those kind of venues because it's an arena, so it's not like a lockdown. And it was just more for safety purposes. And when Michelle and I saw you, I'm like, oh crap, get Perry, get Perry, get Perry.
I was so clueless to know that. You what?
We didn't want Perry to have blood on his Timbs.
And I was so clueless to know that there was even an issue. So just kind of reflecting on your whole work journey and how your previous experiences, how have they prepared you for the role that you now have as a CEO of NPR and PBS for the Toronto and Buffalo area.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like the first job I've had where everything I did is now in one building. My television experience, my streaming experience, certainly back in the rah-rah 90s when I was doing radio. But radio's a lot different now, so it's more about adding video to radio and stuff. There's a new concept, right? So it really has taken everything I've done, and also in a city that I frankly love, and also Toronto. I'm falling in love with that city, every time I'm there, and we have great offices up there, great studios, and it's a great city. It really is.
I love Toronto.
Yeah.
When I was at Vivo, I was the rep for Vivo Canada.
Yes.
So I would go up there every couple of months to see the labels there.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with the city too. It's so great.
It's
Yeah.
really true. You said something, Perry, about labels. That's another part that I do miss. Whether it's Lou Robinson or Diane Mayer or David Saslow, there was these label people that you would spend an hour on the phone just talking about the art form of it, and right?
Yep.
That part is missing too, because you were able to connect those dots, or a label person being so adamant that you had to be at a show because it's going to be important. And then you're like, okay, fine. And then you're like, oh, thank you for inviting me to this, because sometimes at the end of the day, okay, do I have the energy? But there were some times where, please see this. And you're like, boom, done,
I remember going to not knowing anything about the band, going to a Yeah 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 show at Hammerstein, and I went with, I don't know if I went with you guys, but I was sitting right near you and Holly upstairs.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. And then I saw the show and I was blown away. I was like, Karen O is amazing.
Perry, my favorite moment on the movie awards when we had them on was when, instead of doing the pedal drop of all the rose petals, the fact that it just came down and crashed on top of her. And that was, and to give credit where it came from, Spike Jonze, who she was dating at the time, is the one that came up with the concept. I mean, you couldn't rehearse that because, cleanup.
Right.
But that was flippin' beautiful when they did that.
Wow.
Flippin' beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of times you go to concerts not only to watch the stage, but to watch the reaction of the audience.
Right.
And the minute they start moving up, or they get there early to see even the opening band, because most of the time they would drag you to see the opening band because they were obviously not as established. But you kind of look at the audience and go, okay, that looks like us. Okay, that's an MTV2 person. That's an MTV person. And you would kind of like do your own mini focus groups there while you were at these shows, for sure.
Yeah.
That's one place that you can surround yourself by super fans that everyone is equal.
Yep.
You're all there for the love of that artist, and it's incredible. So, which actually now leads us to our last and final kind of question that we ask all of our guests. What's your favorite current or past New York venue? And do you have a favorite act that you've seen there?
Yeah, I can go. I wrote the list out, so I just because
Give us the
sadly
top
the
5.
list became too long. Definitely Rage at Roseland when they did that 7 or 10 night stay. Pearl Jam at Jones Beach when Eddie climbed up the entire structure at Jones Beach. Coldplay at the Box of all places.
Oh, wow.
One of my favorite
Wow.
one of my favorite venues. Although on the record, I always left around 1 a.m. I'll just leave it at that.
No one has mentioned the Box yet, and everybody we've talked to.
The Box was a great place to see shows and see other things too, but a great place to see shows. I'm so glad they're still open. It's the part of New York that I miss, is the sense of danger, and the Box had that sense of danger. I really
right.
Replacements at the Beacon. This new artist I love from London called Self Esteem. I saw her at the Williamsburg Music Hall about a year and a half ago. Sleigh Bells at Terminal 5.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? Jack White at Roseland, when he played on one stage and then the thing went dark and he went over to the other stage and finished up, like, fantastic show. And Parliament at the old Ritz. At the time when there was no union call times, you'd get there at 10 p.m. and some of these bands would not go on until 1:30. You just kind of sat there, and there was no phones to kind of get bored with. You just kind of had to sit there and create your own fun. I also
great ones.
I also loved Hudson Piers back in the day. Violent Femmes. I saw Echo and the Bunnymen there. Like, there was this outdoor venue in New York City that was actually really cool.
Yeah.
And then we did it was probably about 6 months before 9/11. We did Alicia Keys on top of the World Trade Center.
Wow.
Which was, it was for an affiliate dinner. and we had her up there, and it was a fantastic performance. It was really
Wow,
Wow.
that's incredible.
yeah.
Well, I think you
right.
hit every past and current venue in New York City. No, actually, there's many, many more, which is amazing. That's the best part about New York too, right? Because
yeah.
there's so many places to see live music.
That was the great thing. Like you could go to Mercury Lounge and then go to Bowery Electric and then Bowery Ballroom and then go to Brooklyn Steel. Like there was always, you know, somewhere to go. Pianos was another great
Yeah.
look. We saw Vanessa Carlton there in one of her first concerts. You know, never saw Brooke Hogan live, but yeah, we saw some really good stars.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of these venues just have a sense of comfort. So
Yeah.
it's almost like I love the venue. The sound's good. I know where to kind of position myself to get a good view. So you're always going to have a good night. They have my favorite drink there.
Exactly.
You know,
And also a little secret for those that do go attend festivals, always go to the left. Always go to the left. Because most people just naturally go this way, go to the left.
Right.
To the left.
Well, I'm a lefty, so I'm with you. I'm with you.
Can I tell you my one Brooke Hogan story?
Oh,
Please do.
Okay.
Someone else brought up Brooke. Who was that? Lou Smith a few weeks ago, I think.
Oh, really?
He works
Jeez.
Brooke.
Boy, that's kind of sad that this has come up twice. Brooke Hogan, sometimes innocence is beautiful. Sometimes innocence is just endearing. So this is when I was at VH1 and I called the music lounge. Hey, can I just have this? Because she has a new video. And yeah, no problem. So we showed the video, and before, she had all her friends there and her dad was there and stuff. And she's sitting on the floor by the big screen. We had the music lounge. And this is exactly what she said. Oh my God. She looked at her friend. She goes, oh my God, this is probably what the Beatles felt like when they watched their first music video.
Exactly. On that note.
Oh my God.
And scene.
Oh, Brooke. Well, that was a great way to end this, Tom. You've brought back some amazing memories.
Thanks for having me. I'm really
been a real
honored.
treat.
As you know, I really not only respect the two of you, but all of our play group that we were worked with. And I wish we got together more, but I do know that I always look at, particularly my relationship with the two of you, very fondly and incredibly warmly. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, enjoy the weekend.
Was my hair
Thanks
okay?
again.
I mean, I know I never had good hair, but hopefully my
Always good hair.
Thank you.
All right,
by the way,
take
I'm
care.
so glad we all look great and the same we looked at when we walked in the building. We all look the
There
same.
you go. We don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
All right. See ya.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us today in the Music Lounge.
And tune in next week to hear more stories about your favorite era of MTV.